So today's gonna be a bit of a long one, so buckle your seatbelts and let's go. But, Juby Sims invited me to her first ever Sims 4 Builders collab, and when I tell you I screamed. But, what I decided to do for the Colossal Castle theme was rebuild all of Gerudo Town from Breath of the Wild in The Sims. Let's not waste any time and get into it. So for some reason, I started doing this rock thing that literally doesn't even last past like, the 5-hour mark, we'll say. But it's a 37-hour build, so maybe that's not that long in essence. But watching it back, I literally hate it, so I'm glad I changed it anyway, because it looks more colorful and bougie in the end. So we'll just ignore it, just ignore it. But then I started doing like proper things, like the fountain walkway that goes before the castle. And this was before I decided that it was probably a good idea to like reference the game, maybe. So I was just kind of watching a YouTube video of some guy walking through Gerudo Town, and I was like, this will be fine for the entire thing. I'm sure I won't have any problems. But you know, I didn't stay like that like forever. But it was longer than it probably should have been, because, you know, it's kind of an intricate little design. I wasn't just about to wing it the entire way. I took a little breaky to comment on Knife Bunny's post because I love them, Lindomed. And I realized pretty early on that I wasn't going to be able to have actual fountains, so I just settled for, like, blue tiles with, like, fences around it that kind of made it look like water. But to be honest, it doesn't look that bad. I convinced myself I was creative by making a fake rug with the stairs, and then I struggled with the room tool. I don't know what's happening here. I don't know what took me so long. I don't know where the indecision came from, but it got resolved. Now, the in-game thrones clearly weren't good enough for me because I had to go and custom make one, which, you know, I'm certainly sure that made things easier, probably. Looking back, I'm like, where did those 37 hours go? What was I doing for 37 hours? And clearly it's doing things like making a custom throne when I could have just used the in-game throne that EA very painstakingly already made for me. They already went through the work, but you know what I said? I'm gonna go through the work too. You're welcome. I decided to make hashtag fake waterfalls with fountains placed individually for so long. I don't know why it took forever, but it did. God, it's so embarrassing watching this back, and I'm like, where did all the time go? But honestly, a bunch of the beginning footage is like stuff that I ended up changing. So like the bones are there, but the flesh is not there yet. Including these lights that I had to lower by 0.45 like 8 times throughout the entire process, and I was sick of it by the end, let me tell you. Now, this is the point that I decided that I should probably, like, go to Gerudo Town in Breath of the Wild instead of watching someone's 15-minute video where they never look up. So I opened the game and I was like, oh goody, I already have a save file. But then the save file was literally just linked straight out of tutorial land, and he didn't even have the paraglider, so I was like, okay, T. So then I had to do the 4 shrines at the Great Plateau. I held torches to keep myself warm while I did this, because Link gets so cold so easily. I went to the Gerudo Desert Tower, realized how wind works. I went to the stable in Gerudo Desert to make food to keep me cool in the desert because I didn't have anything to keep me cool, because all I had was these stupid clothes. I didn't even have these stupid things to keep me warm because all I did was the 4 stupid shrines at the Great Plateau. I went to the bazaar. I remembered that I shouldn't be at the bazaar and that I needed to go to the town gates first and be threatened by tall women with spears. I went back to the bazaar. I bought drag from some guy so that they would let me into the town. And then the entire time I was also just collecting like mushrooms and bugs so that I would sell them to people for 600 rupees because that's how much I needed to get the stupid outfit to get into Gerudo Town, which is where I needed to be to reference for this build. So, you know, just easy stuff. I kept building the sides of the little river parts there and then adding the rocks, because doing little detailed parts within a build this big makes me feel like I'm actually making progress instead of just putting the same beige wallpaper on every single wall because it looks the same, because it's all beige and this world is beige. So I just added a tree because I was like, you know what? It's not beige if there's a tree. The way I survived was by adding more rocks and turning on shaders periodically to try to convince myself that it looked okay in the meantime before it was done, because it was very big. It's a very big build, and I was like, this isn't gonna look good till the end, so I need to trust the process, but I also don't know how to trust the process because all there is rocks. I got to know the debug rocks so well during this that we're like borderline best friends. That's all I have to say. This isn't even a thing that I would do like just in The Sims. I would do this in painting class too. I would paint like a fully rendered eyeball before anything else on like a 6-foot big canvas. And my professor was like, what is this? I can't see what the composition is because all you've done is a hyper-realistic pupil. So clearly what I did about this is continue on that trajectory by moving and rotating single rocks with the tool mod by making this archway thing. And you know what? This made me feel so smart. I was like, no one can stop me. I'm all the way up. And that's all good and fine until I realized that I had to do it to like 8 different doorways over the entire build, and that the way that I'm doing it here isn't even the most effective way, and I didn't even learn how to do it the effective way until the last archway, and I was so bitter about it. I mean, to be honest, there's like a lot of things I didn't realize until the very end of this, and I was like, wow, that would have made things easier. Maybe it would have taken 30 hours instead of 37. And I will keep talking about the amount of hours that it took me because it probably shouldn't have taken me that long. Riju's room was the first room that I like properly furnished with like actual things like vases and plants. You know it's serious when you start adding vases and plants, even a bookcase. And then this whole time I was thinking about the fact that I needed to add a little sand seal stuffed animal, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna find that in The Sims because they haven't released their GERUDO TOWN living pack yet. So I was just like, what's a stuffed animal? Can I use Blarfy? I won't use Blarfy. Blarfy doesn't work here. Blarfy doesn't look like he could survive in a desert. No offense, Blarfy, you know I love Blarfy. But he looks like maybe he wouldn't be thriving. And you know what? That's okay. Maybe I wouldn't be thriving in a desert. So I was like, what would be thriving in a desert? What would be thriving in a desert that looks like it could maybe be a sand seal? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the octopus plushie from Nifty Knitting. Wow, that looks exactly like a sand seal. No one's ever gonna tell the difference. The perfectionist in me had to quickly get over that I wasn't going to be able to faithfully recreate every single thing in the game. So the octopus sand seal is the best I could do, but you know what? At least it's in the right color. That's about as much as I could ask for at that point. Like, the tool mod can do a lot, but it can't do everything. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't about to make a fake sand seal, and I wasn't about to put that shelf inside the window, because I don't know how to use the move part of the tool mod, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. So I just settle. I settle with what I can. And like, don't even get me started about the scale of The Sims. Do you know how much I wish that I could use half tiles? Half tiles would make it so much better for accuracy in any build. It doesn't even have to be this one, but this one is what I was pressed about in the moment. So instead I added exact locations of bottles to make up for the fact that the couches weren't the right size and I had to use chairs instead. And I was really upset about it, but then I was like, you know what, it's fine, it's still colorful. But then every time I went back to the game to reference it, I was like, it's not a couch, it's a chair, and I hate it. But the fact that it's pretty colorful, you know, kind of took my mind off of it. And, you know, there's a barrel where there's a barrel. There's a cup where there's a cup. Mostly everything's the same color where I could do it. So I'll settle. A bunch of different red curtains made their appearance until I decided which ones looked not stupid, which took me like forever because the first ones didn't look stupid, but then I was like, yeah, that looks stupid. So then I replaced it with a bunch of tiny ones, which looked even worse. So I just replaced it with the one that I had before. I did more detail-oriented things because they made me feel #accomplished, which, you know, you love a good accomplished feeling in the morning. Morning. I haven't seen a morning since 2020. Anyway, the best part about being on The Sims for so long was seeing everyone upload builds onto the gallery and getting to comment on them first. Ugh, you love to see it. You love to see it. I only really had like 2 big things left to do, so I started doing other things to fill the time so that I didn't have to start on the big things, which, you know, I'm like, add a brazier here, add a light there, add some more carpets. And then I actually started furnishing it, and I was like, wow, this is gonna take 10 years to finish. And these island living, like, what are these, canopies? I saw one in a build the other day, and I got like fight or flight because of the amount of the canopies that I used in this build. And it was in the same color, it was in orange, as the one that I used, and I was like, nar! Nar! And I'm not saying that I had a bad time doing this build. I had a really good time doing this build. It was very much outside of my comfort zone. I love a tiny home, but every time I see an object that I used like heavily in this build, in like another build, or in the build catalog when I'm doing something else, I'm like, I remember. If I had to like put up a count of the things I used the most, it would probably be the little square lantern from Dream Home Decorator, the canopy from Island Living, or the like gold and red carpet from Get Famous, which I've never used before, but to be honest, it looks like it belongs in a castle, so maybe I did the right thing. And like, I can talk all this talk about things not looking like how I want them to, which was exactly like the game. But the more I did the build, the further I got along with it. I was like, you know what? As long as this has the general vibe, I don't really care. Because anyone who plays The Sims knows that you cannot replicate exactly as things are in The Sims. It's just not built that way specifically because of half tiles, and I'm gonna say it again, I want half tiles, but that's okay. I made my peace with it. That being said, I think this was actually my favorite part of the build to do because it was so colorful and like, oh my god, I got to use the tool mod in a way that I've never used the tool mod, and it made me feel really smart because like the tool mod is very intimidating and it just looked really cool with the carpets. Like, look at the diagonal carpets. I felt so 200 IQ. It was also kind of like a scavenger hunt, like finding items to use as the items from GERUDO Town. Like the giant ring is so like kitschy. I'm kind of obsessed with it. And like that giant lantern, and there's just rugs everywhere, and it makes me so happy because the Gerudo, okay, fight me on this, the Gerudo champion, Urbosa, she's the best champion. I don't want to hear anyone saying that Rivali is the best one, because tell me why. Tell me why Rivali's the best one. Nar. Making arrows out of magic wands was probably the best decision I made. I don't want to talk about the meat booth that has like the cube of meat from Eco Lifestyle with like fish bones in it. It's the most cursed thing of this entire build, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. The sand seals were once again giving me issues before I decided to make them armadillos slightly lowered into the ground so that you couldn't see their arms. Because that checks out. That's what I see in a sand seal. Crates and boxes. It was a lot of crates and boxes. I decided to revisit the interior that I had done without referencing the actual game because I was like, you know what? It probably sucks. It probably sucks. I was like, I don't want to redo this, but I will because it will look better. So I started by doing the rock thing, which made me too happy and still does, to be honest. But I just added the giant statue of one of the Gerudo women, which I guess is a golden armor statue in The Sims because we don't have any giant stone statues of women in The Sims. Because once again, Gerudo Living is not a pack that has been released yet. Oh, and I kept showing my brother this build while I was doing it because me and him did the Breath of the Wild playthrough together, and he kept saying, were we ever there? Did we ever go to that room? And I was like, no. Apparently there's a cooking class building here. This is a cooking class. Who the Gerudo cooking class? Gerudo cooking class? it made me embarrassed because I was like, I am known for just going and wasting time in video games by finding useless collectibles, but also not being a completionist. So like, I don't know how those two merge together, but clearly they do because I'm sitting right here. This build actually made me realize that there's like so many possibilities with just plants and vases in this game. Like I could put a vase and then put any outdoor plants I want in it to make a whole new plant. Like, I don't have to be constricted by the plants that the Sims think I need. I don't care about their meshes. You know what? I'll make my own. I'll make my own with the meshes that you gave me. I'll just combine them. No one will ever know that they're a separate object. I did that so many times here with the little succulent, in the vase. You love to see it. Like, I wish I was better at combining objects in this game to make cool furniture that otherwise isn't in the game, because I see that all the time on social media, and I'm like, why is the Sims community so creative? Like, I'm like, people be making just like windmills with the tool mod, and I'm like, what are you doing? That's so crazy. And not even in my wildest dreams could I imagine doing that when the best I can do is a vase and a separate plant. Oh, and at this point, I feel like it might get, a little tough to watch, because all I did when I needed an object was grab it from somewhere else that I had already used it. There was not a time where I used an object in a house that I hadn't already used somewhere else, so I was just grabbing. From anywhere. I'm like, need a lantern? Let's go to the castle. Need a carpet? Let's go to the market. Oh my god, that rhymed. But I think it kind of helped using the same objects in a bunch of places, because maybe it wouldn't have been cohesive enough if I hadn't done that. And that terrifies me, because this build is on a 50 by 50, which, another thing, I wanted desperately for this lot to be a 64 by 64. But we do not have a desert world that gives us a 64 by 64 lot, other than Strangerville, which is the secret lab lot. But you know what? Even with all the mods in the world, have the most modded game ever, you cannot edit that lot, because I guess the mother plant needs like her space or whatever. But you know what? All I wanted was a big desert, because I had to sacrifice like the spot where I was gonna make a shrine at the front. There was gonna be a cool shrine at the front. There could have been more rocks, because you know how stupid it looks that the back of the build has no rocks on it. It looks naked. It's naked. And I could have taken the L on that and like built on a 64 by 64 in like Windenburg, but it would look so out of place that I think that would bother me more than the nakedness of the back of this castle, because it would just be green everywhere, like we're in the Great Plateau having a great time now, Hyrule Castle. No, that's not what we're doing here. We're in the desert, it's hot, there's sun. You have to wear these nice little outfits to be able to go places, because otherwise you'll literally melt your face off if you don't have an ice sword carrying around, which I don't want to talk about the physics of having an ice sword that cools you down. Would that work? I guess that would work. I don't want to talk about it. There are sacrifices you have to make in The Sims. The 50 by 50 lot was the sacrifice I made, even though it upset me, but the scale ended up being pretty much correct. I think the only difference was that it would have been better if there were half tiles, and that I used toddler beds as adult beds, which, like, you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't notice, because, like, those beds are honestly fine. I feel like they're fine. Like, am I wrong in thinking that the single beds in The Sims, they're really long? Or maybe it's that they're really skinny, but they feel really long for, like, tall people. And I guess that's because The Sims are, like, canonically 6 feet tall, because they don't have height sliders, like, in the base game. So 6 feet tall, which is why it's always weird when I make my Sim self and they're 6 feet tall. I'm like, what are you doing? She is not 6 feet tall in real life. You stop that right now. It feels so surreal to see me as 6 feet tall, because it's just not right. But you know what? The toddler beds are right. So we stuck with that. Most of the beds are toddler beds. So, and you know what? I never said that this was a functional build. I would bet my booty that this is the least functional build that I've probably ever done. And the toddler beds are part of that. You win some, you lose some. and you're very highly aware of the ones you lose. Another question that this brought up was the whole, like, you know, similar to, like, how many students are actually at Hogwarts, like, how many people live in Gerudo Town? Because there are all these houses, but some of the houses don't have beds, but then some of the houses have, like, one adult bed, but there's also, like, canonical Gerudo children who play games in the street, who I had never noticed before because they literally just look like compressed Gerudo women. So I guess the toddler beds make sense. I don't know if they have stories. What's their story? Do they get names? Everyone in this game has a name. Like, you go up to some random guy in a stable and his name is like Jimmy. And you're like, hey, Jimmy, and then he has a quest for you. He's like, my friend went missing in Death Mountain. And I'm like, wow, Jimmy, that sounds like a real pickle you're in. That's such a shame. And another shame is the technical difficulties that come in a lot this big, because there are many. You will notice here that I was just adding a half wall to make it look more complete, but I didn't even realize that that object was like connected mentally to a bunch of other objects. So I did that, not knowing that that would delete like a floor. It deleted the stairs right there. And for what? I didn't even notice for like ever. So I just went along adding half walls everywhere else. I added columns. I added a bunch of stuff because I didn't know. I didn't know the sheer vastness of the items that were connected via their brains, via some weird telekinesis. Because strange, there were so many of them. Like, look at this. You go touch it and then everything else turns yellow. I'm like, you don't have anything to do with you. What are you doing? So then I ignored it because I was like, you know what? I can't deal with this right now. I'm gonna lose my mind if I see one more thing flash yellow on my screen right now. I'm gonna lose my mind. And then at this point, I was just testing what items were connected via their weird telekinetic brain powers. And it was so many. I was like, oh, is it this stair? But yeah, that stair's connected with that one. That one's connected with that one. For some reason, that half wall's connected with half of the other entire build. I don't know why. I don't know why it is. One half wall on a floor that isn't even on the same floor as the other things should not affect that many things. Oh my god, you can see the stairs in the back. If I delete that stair over there, it should not delete the stairs over there. That doesn't make any sense. They're not connected. They're not even related to each other. That are not even like eyebrows who are like sisters but not twins. They're not even related. They're not even related. It was so annoying, and it only presented itself as a problem near the end, which I was like thankful for, but I was also like so scared to touch any object. Because I was like, if this is connected via brainwaves to those stairs, what if I can't delete these stairs that don't need to be here? Because they weren't connected at first, but they are now. I don't know what changed. But clearly it did. I took out my frustrations by adding more rocks to the wall with tool mod, and at this point I had discovered the easier way to do it, so that was nice after the issues I was having in this build. At least I wasn't having them with the rocks. And they kind of look cool all laid out like that, which, like, tool mod, you can do multiple things at a time. There's a multi-select tool. God, what a time to be alive. This is such advanced technology. Twisted Mexi really do be the mind of our generation of simmers. Because straight up, this build made me very reliant on tool mod. Before I would use it, like, casually. I'm like, oh, I want a broom to be, like, leaning against the wall. But no, tool mod is a necessity now. Especially when I started making this waterfall, which when I started, I was like, first of all, I need to have the waterfall. I need to have it, but I have no idea how I'm gonna do it. So my plan was to just put a bunch of fountains, see how it looks, question it. I, of course, got my Carco Sim to be the one to play test it, because who else would I have? And then I just kept adding more once I was in the live mode, build mode thing, because there's a difference. There's a difference between build mode, and live mode, build mode, which, like, okay, The Sims, I see you. So I started editing all the water features because I realized they weren't exactly how I wanted them to be, and I could finally see the water in live mode build mode. So I added a bunch of more fountains to have it kind of look like, even though it was going up, to look like it was going down. And then eventually, when I had them all placed, I used the tool mod again and the multi-select tool to make the fountain items themselves like really, really tiny so that you couldn't even see them at all. So that added to the illusion even more. At this point, it was like a magic show. We out here, Penn and Teller fool us. It's exactly like that. Yeah. And then the final details were just adding terrain paint, adding little piles of sand to make it look lived in, and then a bunch of other things that I had missed when I toured through it. So like, you know, a floating box, a floating carpet or two, and maybe, you know, a couple missing lights, which, you know, let me mention again, those square lights that I added on the entryway to the castle, I did have to lower those 5 times. Approximately, I had to do it again after the recording because every time I save it to the gallery, it doesn't work. But anyway. Well, that's the build. I hope you had a good time seeing, you know, how it's done. It took me a hot second. I'm pretty proud of it. Thank you, Ganjubi, for inviting me to the collab. I love you so much. And I hope to see all of you in another video. And in that case, I will see you then. Bye-bye.